Welcome, ranchers, to Mindfulness with Marcia. You know, being on PTO last week, I had great moments, really beautiful moments, actually, to reflect more deeply on my own mindfulness journey and mindfulness practice, realizing that back to school is right here now, and it's really a busy time for me. If I don't deliberately set some intentions on how I'm going to maneuver, travel, get through this time in a mindful way, then oftentimes my old habits and autopilot kind of mannerisms and activities just take over. I've been on this journey for years now, and one of the things that has always been important to me is the idea or notion of decluttering in my mindful journey. And for me, it's not just the decluttering of all the stuff, although I'd have to admit that I have plenty of stuff and I still have stuff that I'm decluttering. But there are other areas in my life that needed, shall we say, simplifying. Like I know I've shared with you before on other Mindfulness with Marcia sessions, my own personal calendar or schedule. I found myself booking or scheduling back-to-back meetings without even 15 minutes in between to take a drink of water or to walk a few, minutes down the hall and stretch my legs and look at and watch kids learn. Activities, I mean, even things I really love to do, just pack them in, and then without ever saying no or really thinking about, well, how much do I already have scheduled for that time? And even like with tickets that I had purchased, like let's say for a concert or a show months and months ago, then as it got closer to the event and I'm all packed in, like all of a sudden I'm all stressed out with no place to breathe. And I almost feel like this event that I spent sometimes some big bucks for tickets feels more like a big energy drain, and it kind of takes some of the excitement away. And sometimes it's like, I don't even know if I want to go. And I did that to myself. Or even some of my most beloved hobbies. I shouldn't even tell you how many flowering pots I've had around my house. Let's just say under 50, but more than 25 at a time. And while I enjoyed potting them and I enjoyed looking at them and all those kinds of things, this year I deliberately have, are you ready? Three pots to nurture, to watch over, to be mindful of, to look at the different growth patterns, to water, to take care of. And now when I come home from work, to go out to water 3 pots instead of, oh, I can't believe I've got to water. It's going to take 2 hours to drag 2 hoses. Totally different feeling and enjoyment about this hobby of growing. It's been pretty delightful to discover a different feeling of not being so loaded with things and stuff and places and people to do things with. So I realized not just decluttering or removing, but to deliberately making sure I had space. That element of space, or I might call it openness, voids, reserved capacity, emptiness, just some emptiness in my life. I just always had this feeling that I had to be full, and everything had to be filled up and do everything to the max, When I consider space, oftentimes so many art teachers and or artists, like if I go to an art fair, they tell me about when they paint or draw on a canvas, it's as much about the space, the voids where there are no objects, that really create a beautiful masterpiece. That space or void in your living space could be space in a drawer or cabinet. The volume of air in a kitchen when it's not all cluttered with stuff on every countertop and every little nook and cranny. How about just open mindfulness in thought? Or even appreciating and noticing less traffic, more voids on a highway on your commute to work or travel. Neuroscientist Dr. Rick Hansen stated the appreciation of space in this way. And I am going to warn you, because at first it sounds kind of heavy, kind of like, what? So I might say it twice, because for me, it took me even more than twice for it to really sink in. But he says we can consciously appreciate the beneficial somethings that are the gifts of various nothings. Let me state that again. We can consciously appreciate the beneficial somethings that are the gifts of various nothings. I had that written on a card and put on my mirror in the bathroom for, oh gosh, it was up there for quite a while, and I would read it every day to help me understand that there's beauty and benefit and ease and joy in voids and emptiness and openness that you can only get if you have it and you don't intentionally fill it full all the time. And not only is it in things or items in our physical environment, I mentioned earlier even about thoughts, but what about the wallpaper? Let's call it the wallpaper of our own minds. Those everyday preoccupations that fill up like weeds, taking over that yard or garden of our mind. The usual suspects, well, they include things like worries and issues with work, resentments, regrets. Right now, the pandemic. Try to be more mindful of these. In other words, disengage faster when they start to take over. Intentionally shift your attention to something that's more positive, something more interesting, something more joyful. And then try to invest yourself in those things. You know, I found myself on PTO with this big bucket of tasks I wanted to do. And it was all things I wanted to do outside. But if I filled up that big bucket of to-dos, even though I really wanted to do them all, well, I'd have to give up space. I can't fill that bucket and not have to give up space. Give up the resources daily of time, my energy. In order to have openness and voids, I couldn't pack it all in. I had to give up some of my wants, some of the things I really thought I wanted to do, and really prioritize down to, I only really worked on 2 major projects that filled my week with the tasks of those 2 projects and allowed myself some time to have openness, emptiness, and some voids. A couple times when I was taking a break from one of my projects, I sat on that patio you saw me in last week and just sat there, listened to the water in my fountain. No intention of doing anything, but just being present with the water. So I deliberately decided to put some space between finishing one thing and starting another. How many times do you find yourself that the minute you finish one project, you boom right into another? And now I'm back here in the office. And like we always say, I don't know if it's worth being gone, because then you have all these emails and phone calls and things to get back to. And I've just decided that in the past couple days, after sending one email, I'm going to take a breath before I reply to another one. I mean, how can I really be present with the next one if I'm just bang, 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 and don't give myself any time to reflect before I jump into another one. How about you, my friends? Could you, when let's say the dishes are done, pause for a break before you run and do some laundry or scrub this or wipe up this or get this? Allow yourself a void, some space. This is something I've been trying. When in a conversation, let the end of one topic kind of reverberate, allow some reflection for even a moment before you launch into another topic or another conversation. You know, it seems like, well, that seems like no-brainers. It seems so easy to do, but as we've talked about before, deliberately being mindful, allowing for presence, it really can be tough. And it takes practice and practice and practice and practice. As I've mentioned here already with you today, how many times have I used the word deliberate? I have to deliberately make sure that I'm having an intention to do it. Now, there are times when it just sort of flows and it happens. And when I recognize that, it's like, I'm starting to get off of autopilot and I'm starting to just have some of those moments in my life. But it's not all the time. It's not all the time. It takes a whole lifetime, I believe, of practicing to really make some of these things a reality on a daily basis. So also you could consider dropping stuff that you no longer, I was going to say want to, but can afford if you want a mindful lifestyle, to lug around in your backpack. Yeah, you know, I've shared this thought with you many times in Mindfulness with Marsha. These pesky habits, these autopilot reactions. Well, I bet many of you are just like me, that you have these habits or indulgences, ideas, grudges, or maybe some of us even could call them fixations that were kind of okay at one time. They worked for us, but now they seem to be robbing us of our precious resources, especially if we have changing circumstances, such as like right now, juggling so many more balls due to the pandemic. If you're a parent, getting kids ready to go to school and we don't even know what school's going to look like, realizing that those summer weeks are starting to dwindle away and I have so many things yet to get done. Or maybe it's the aging of yourself, or maybe taking care of aging parents. These changes, remember that, put pressure, put some boundaries on those limited resources of time and energy. So what could you gain by emptying out some of this stuff from your own habit backpack? So this week, I want you to pause and I want you to really think about trying to enjoy some emptiness, some space, some voids, in whatever form that speaks to you. Maybe it's a quiet night when everybody's asleep but you, and you can just enjoy the silence. If you're a journalist, maybe it's a blank page in your journal rather than one that's all filled up with writing. For me, one of the things I really enjoy is when I begin to cook, if my countertop is real open. You know, there's not a lot of clutter and things around, or it's nice and open and I feel like it's ready for me to create this masterful meal. Maybe it's a little space, little hole in your schedule, or even be thinking of your mind, space between thoughts, as your mind becomes more calm and still. Or maybe you could even plan a Saturday with absolutely no plans at all. I know that's a real luxury for most of us, but we can make it happen. So until next time, my friends, stay safe and be well.